This is a meeting of the Flood Subcommittee that was scheduled last week in response to a couple of emails and phone calls that members of the council got and the city manager concerning the assessments in the flood area. So I think we're waiting for a couple of folks. I hope we got the time correct, but if not, Mr. Clerk, why don't we begin, because there is another meeting at 6 o'clock. There's a finance subcommittee meeting at 6 o'clock, and we can at least get an update on some of the issues, and then should the folks from the PCC show up, then we'll go back to what the original issue and intent of this meeting is. That's the assessments of folks that live in and affected in the flood area. So can the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Councilor Elliott?
Here.
Councilor Caulfield? Councilor Rita Mercia?
Here.
Councilor Mendonça, 3 present, 1 absent.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, hopefully, while we're waiting, Mr. Manager, can you give us an update, or Mr. McCarthy, on some of the issues that we have discussed? I see the engineer and Mr. Young from the wastewater treatment plant here as well. Maybe just an update on some of the issues that we have been working on. Any further communication from members of Congress, or I know that wasn't the intent of this meeting, but maybe you can give us an update.
Well, Council, I don't think much has happened along those fronts. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. We're working with FEMA right now. We've got some issues related to the flood insurance mapping that we're commenting on with FEMA. They go out on a fairly regular basis and redo the flood zone maps. Apparently there's been some issues up in some other areas of the state which prompted them to come out and redo these maps, and there are a number of homes now, or properties that are now have been put into designated flood zones, which they were eligible for the insurance, but they would have to get that in order to maintain their eligibility for assistance. Mr. McCarthy has been working on many of those issues. We've been working with CDM on analyzing the opportunities and options we might have out in the Clay Pit Brook area. But unfortunately, we haven't gotten much in the way of response from our delegation, from Senator Kennedy and Kerry, other than the correspondence that we've already received. We are meeting on later this week with Congresswoman Tsongas to discuss a number of issues related to the federal government and the city of Lowell, and this is certainly high on our priority list. But we really haven't been able to get much further along on those lines.
Okay, perhaps we can get I see Mr. McCarthy here, an update, or you, Mr. Manager, on where that study is of the Beaver Brook area. Is there any update on that, Mr. McCarthy? They just continue to do their surveys and...
Yeah, FEMA, we haven't received any updates on the hydrological study for Beaver Brook at all yet. No timelines.
Can you just refresh my memory and the subcommittee members on what is the schedule on data collection, surveys? Is there any schedule for or time frame when we're going to receive a preliminary report or study?
Hydrological study?
On the study, yes.
The Army Corps really hasn't indicated anything. They did come up, take some of the measurements. We did provide some data to them from our records, especially CDM records that we had on the topic, but there was really no indication of turnaround time at all. Again, this was the funding of this came sort of on the tail end of another project, so that could be part of the holdup for getting some sort of report.
Okay, good. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the city manager, it seems that the major focus at this particular meeting is directed from an email that we got which asks this question: could the city provide an across-the-board reduction in the residential land values struck by the floods? The individual abatement process is extremely burdensome and cumbersome. So I am asking you, Mr. Manager, through these people that met and discussed this, and some time ago when we first heard of the devastation that took place, we did at that time ask if there was a way we could reevaluate the property that in question. Now, I don't know if we can do that. I think, in my personal opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, if I were this person that was living in this particular area in a flood zone, I would ask the city if I could get some sort of relief. And I think they have a legitimate concern here. So my question is, and I'm not asking for an answer right this moment, if we could look into the possibility through the assessor's office to see if there's a way we could re-evaluate their property and know for sure that they're in a particular floodplain, and see if we could help them in some particular way. That's my concern right here.
Well, Councilor Mercia, we did bring this up last week, and that's why we did call this meeting. I was just waiting, and Mr. Carvel is here, and some other members of the PCC subcommittee.
Right.
I just wanted to wait a little bit so they could come here so we could have that discussion, and we've invited Sue LeMay here last week and to come here and answer those exact questions. So I see that members of the PCC have arrived. So we are just proceeding, Mr. Carvel, with the question from Linda Ignacio that you discussed last night at your subcommittee meeting. We're just sort of killing a little bit of time earlier, getting an update from TJ McCarthy and the manager on some of the issues. There's been not much progress on with the Army Corps of Engineer or from the delegation, Washington delegation. So without any further ado, why don't I go to you, Mr. Manager, and or the assessors. Councilor Mercia did ask the question, which is the reason why we are here, to follow up on, the assessment process and what can be done for those folks that live in the flood district. So, Mr. Carvel, do you want to?
Excuse me, may I make one
Sure.
comment, and then I'll sit down. We have one of our members that's coming here with information and data that bears on the exact motion that Councilor Mercia just made. However, there's some confusion because our people were told this meeting was at 6 o'clock, so I just happened to be a little early, and I think the other people.
Okay, well, we're glad you're here.
So they're going to be here, but they're going to be at 6 o'clock, so.
Okay, unfortunately, we have a finance subcommittee meeting at 6 o'clock, so we'll see what we can do.
Well, if I could, obviously, any actions we take with regards to the valuation of property and property taxes are all governed by state law, so and state regulations. So we have to do everything in compliance with that. But I believe the assessor, Sue LeMay, is here to speak to this issue because, in fact, we have taken some action with a number of those properties.
Actually, what we had done is, when the flood occurred, we had put an adjustment on those properties, a cost to cure at the time, on any property that was affected by the flood. And that we left on for the entire year, even if the property was rehabbed during that year. What we've done since then is we've spoken to the Department of Revenue and explained what has gone on down there, and they have allowed us to put a 15% adjustment on the land values. In addition, we have obviously been looking at the sales very closely down there, and we feel that we are underneath, the assessment is underneath what the sale prices have been.
So the short answer there is that we have made that 15% adjustment as well as on the land value, and we've been monitoring it with the reviewing it with the sales data.
Right.
To find that, in fact, we are well below that.
Yes. Any property that was adjusted prior to this has a 15% reduction on it.
So can I just have one quick question, then Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I'm going to pose is the people who live in the flood area, they're being readjusted on their land value?
Their land value has been adjusted by 15%.
So
It's already been done.
for this year?
Yes.
Oh, so that's already been taken care of?
Yes, and that will continue until we see what the sales bring in future years. It should adjust itself within a couple of years.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting for the representatives of the neighborhood, I just have a few questions. One of the main issues, Mr. Manager, was the flashboards at the dam to see if we could lower the river by a foot
We've been working with the Boot Hydro and L Corporation. They're installing some new flashboards. It's a inflatable flashboard system. They're doing that in Lawrence. They're getting testing that out. They have encountered some resistance here in the city from the National Park. We're trying to work through that right now, but they're doing that, and then they're moving upriver here to put it in Lowell.
I think the concern of the neighborhood is if a flood is imminent next spring, would Boot Hydro immediately lower the river to let Clay Pit Brook neighborhood?
Right. The problem with the current flashboard, and this is why they want to put in these the inflatable system, is they can manage that within seconds. They can just take that, lower it, and let the water flow freely. The current flashboard system that's out there, those pieces of plywood, you can't, if the flood is imminent, you can't send someone out there to remove those. They're designed to, as the flood waters come up, to eventually tip over, and they're not done. Obviously, it doesn't happen.
What their concern is the floatable... inflatable. They won't be installed for another 3 or 4 years, probably. And they're concerned about next spring and...
Right, and we're trying to get that moved up, the inflatable ones. It won't be for next spring, I can tell you.
And when Boot Hydro wants to work on those dams, they go out there and remove them all the time. So,
right, but at the same time, if they obviously try to keep it up at a certain level for economic reasons when there isn't a flood imminent. The problem becomes when there is one imminent, then they can't get out there because the conditions don't allow.
And I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But I can see where the people are coming from.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why I think the solution here is
there's
really...
an economic reason for those boards to be lowered.
Right. There's a need for us to try to work to get that inflatable system in there sooner and to get the National Park to buy into that.
Has Boot Hydro or FERC, have they responded to our letters of request? Or are they willing to work with us?
Oh, Boot Hydro's very well. It has indicated to me. I had a meeting with them just less than a month ago. They're very interested in working with us on these types of issues. Okay. But again, the solution is for them is really to get this inflatable system in. The current board system, they need to keep the water up at a certain level.
Right.
And obviously, when there's a flood, they want those coming down as well. But it isn't something that they can do in a flood condition.
I just want to compliment you and the staff for all the removal of the overgrowth and the trees along the river. Mm-hmm. A lot of compliments on that, and it's certainly going to help.
We've gotten some negative comments from people that like the trees and the growth, but overwhelmingly it's been very positive responses. And the reason for that is to, as you know, is to clear that growth out of the levee, which was causing some potential damage to the integrity of that levee.
There's only one other issue I want to discuss, and I brought this up at every meeting with TJ and yourself, is New York Street. We have to see if we can address New York Street. Any future flooding, and there's at least 4 homes on New York Street that get flooded out all the time.
Right. That's where along the Beaver Brook, we were able to put to build up the levee. The problem comes on the area behind New York. That's not a brook so much where you can boost up the levee. It's a wetland area.
Right.
And is that, we're limited in what we can do there. And ultimately, as we all know, water finds its way somewhere.
Yeah.
And if it's backed up there, it's going to have repercussions somewhere else. But we are looking at some different solutions there, and that's where the Corps of Engineers project becomes very important to us.
That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I see Mrs. Ignacio is here, Mr. Carvel. So if you'd like to come on up, and must have been a time confusion, but could you maybe fill us in on your meeting last night and what your thoughts are? And again, we'll have the assessor come up and give a discussion. The question again is, can those homes in the flood area be abated across the board? And Mr. Carvel or
yes.
Ms. Ignacio?
Well, last night, we talked about a number of issues, and what I'd like to do is come back to the other issues that we talked to, if I may, if there's time, and we'll talk just to the abatement issue at the moment. And Steve Massey has a spreadsheet that's put together for a fairly large sampling of the areas in the flood area, the Shirley Avenues, the Magnolias, all of those streets. And when we looked at a lot of those, there's some that actually went down for the land value. There's others that went up significantly for the land value. So the question is, how could they have a 15% reduction and the land value go up? So Steve's prepared to talk to that, and I'd like to turn it over to him, and then I'll come back with some other issues if time allows.
Absolutely.
Mine will be quick, too.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
How are you? Steve Massey. Actually, Linda did the spreadsheet because I can't do anything with computers. I can barely
Thank you,
do
Linda.
email. We have some copies for everybody. You mind if I?
Not at all.
I'll let everybody get
If the subcommittee would so indulge, and Mr. Manager, could we get the chairman of the board of the assessors up here to, can you come up here, Sue? I think most of these questions and concerns can be answered by you,
That'd
so
help, huh?
I think it'd be helpful to have you come sit up here. Mr. Massey?
Okay, basically, we got, a few calls from people who have looked at their assessments, and we started looking at them a little bit more ourselves. And Linda pretty much handled her neighborhood over off the Clay Pit Brook area and checked into those and found there was quite a few that were a lot higher. I actually did the area down around the Rosemont, Martin Street, Casco, New York Street. And what we found is that a lot of the land assessments have gone up a lot. Some of them, according to what I saw, Hank's Garage, 127 Martin, up 69% in land value. Those guys were 6 feet underwater 2 years ago, yet their land is now 69% more. It doesn't make any sense. I also checked out what a non-floodplain lot, I believe we had 8,100 square feet non-floodplain lot around 20 Alma Street, and compared that new value of $124,000 to a floodplain lot of 8,900 square feet for $129,000. More money for the floodplain lot of the same size on Martin Street. Doesn't make any sense. Then I went and did a few comps at Middlesex Registry of Deeds, nothing major. I was able to find probably 2 or 3 current foreclosures in the neighborhood of Martin Street. And I found 3 sales also there. And the sales are ridiculously low, which is partly to be blamed by the flood issue. 100 Lafayette, it's proposed to be assessed for $205. It's sold for $165 just last month. 60 Lafayette, again, proposed to be $205, sold in July, $157,000. Now, I don't know what these properties look like. I'm just saying the difference is outrageously lower than what it is proposed to be. And I understand some of that is that the assessor has to use data that might be a little bit old. That explains some of it, but that doesn't help people this year or next either. So we're just trying to bring this up to see if there's some way that the assessor, the city council, somebody can kind of look at it and just say, look, these are maybe issues we didn't really care about before, because floodplain didn't mean much more than just paying a little extra insurance, but now it actually means being this far underwater. So there really is a decrease, I believe, in the market value for some of these properties. And at the very least, the city, we're hoping, can help out.
Well, I think
That's
that...
about it.
No, thank you, Mr. Massey.
Okay.
This information is very helpful, but I think it does raise a point, which is the central issue, Ms. LeMay, is, the market value. What is the value of these folks' homes after the flood? And just to recap, the council did vote to reduce right after the flood. We did vote to take the necessary steps to make those adjustments during the flood, and then you had also indicated just a few moments ago that there was a 15% a 15% reduction on the land value. So that's where we're at, but I think the information that we have just been giving, can you please respond to, why those assessments are proposed as they are, and how we got there?
And let me just clarify, the 15% adjustment is on the properties that were affected by the flood 2 years ago. So if the flood was affected and we had to put an adjustment for cost to cure, we put that 15% adjustment on there. If the properties did not get affected by the flood, they do not have the 15%, and that is one thing that the Department of Revenue mandated that we do it that way. As for the sales, I don't know what has happened over the last few months because we haven't looked at it. But if you recall, I said a few minutes ago that, the values are going to reflect what the sales are, and it's going to come into play within the next year or so. What we have done is we've looked at the last post sales of the flood, and obviously there's not a lot of them, but there are several of them, and every one of them that I've looked at, other than one of them, which was not an arm's length sale, the assessment is under the sale price at this point. And as I said earlier, we're taking a good look at what the sales are coming in at and what they are assessed for. We're keeping an eye on it as we go along. If the sales are coming in a lot lower this year, that will be reflected in next year's values because we do value annually.
Okay, so I think that's the point of clarification that, or it's a good point of clarification, if you will. These assessments are based upon last year's values. So these homes that are being sold or have sold, say 10/30 or 7/30/07, 10/31/07, that's not going to be reflected in this year's assessments.
If
Mr.
I may,
Manager?
the Department of Revenue requires it requires every community to take a certain snapshot in time, and that snapshot is December 31st of the prior year. So in this case, this would be December 31st of 2006, and it uses sales data at approximately that point in time. You have to have some cutoff, and you can't go, so this information will be picked up for the following year. But as Ms. LeMay has said, every property that was affected by the flood 2 years ago has had that adjustment. And the Department of Revenue, again, which sets the rules and certifies our values, and they've certified all these values. At this point in time, you can't go back and redo it, but you can, people can come in individually and ask for some type of adjustment. But across the board type of adjustments, which we've done, have been approved by the Department of Revenue with certain conditions. But it's always difficult for people, I think, and this isn't just in this particular situation, but whenever we talk about valuation, it's very difficult for people to sort of keep in mind that we have to go back to the prior December, a year ago, to actually use the sales data at that point in time.
Okay, I know members have questions. I just have one more, but me as a homeowner, right now, I'm looking at this saying, it doesn't really make sense. I understand that's the law. But what about the individual abatement process? Can I, as a homeowner, these folks down there, can they still go through that process based upon, some of this information as well?
Actually, no. They can file an abatement application, but I have to look at the 2006 calendar year sales. I can't take the 2007 into consideration for the December 31st or January 1st deadline that we used for this current year.
Okay, Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're not just talking about the 2006 flood, we're talking about the 2007 flood as well. There were homes on New York Street, Townsend Ave and Shirley Avenue that were affected in the year 2007 by a flood. I think that's the gist of this whole topic. Some of the land is still underwater, and I know there were at least 3 homes on New York Street that had some serious flooding. I think, what can we do for that, Susan, to take another look at that assessment and see if we can reach out and help some of these people? Because they cannot sell their homes for the assessed value. They just can't.
They could in 2006, and that was post-flood. The values that we came in with, the assessments that we came in with, are based on the sales in 2006. And there are several of them, there's like 40-something of them, but that's including the condominiums that, down the Grandview condominiums. So there's a few of them there. But the sales that we've seen, other than one sale on Martin Street, which we can't make heads or tails, and we've tried to research the sale, are coming in under the sale prices. The values are under the sale prices at this point. For those that were affected last year, if we don't know about it and they don't have an adjustment on there, then they certainly should come in and talk to me.
In the Clay Pit Brook area, I'd like to, if you could take a look at those properties.
I personally went to the Clay Pit Brook area myself and did several hundred houses, went by and through 700 houses. And those are the properties that were adjusted 2 years ago, and that adjustment stayed on there for the year, and now with an additional 15% on the land. The land values did change this year, and it was state mandated. They wanted us to change the way that we value land. That's why you see some up and some down. It's clear across the city that the land values changed. However, there is the 15% adjustment, decrease adjustment on those properties that were affected, that we know of that were affected. Now, if we don't know that they were affected, I'm surprised because like I said, physically went out to every one of those properties myself in that area and left a door hanger to give us a call if there was a problem. And those that did got the adjustment.
So what are you telling me?
That I will look at anything that needs to be looked at.
You won't take another look at the...
Absolutely will, yes.
We'll take another look, but it can't be done on an across-the-board basis because those values have been certified based upon and working with the Department of Revenue to set those numbers. And they did have a number of questions for us because of the circumstances that we brought to them in terms of our desire to bring the values into line because of the flooding. But we have to work off of, again, we have to work off of their rules so that there's consistency statewide as to how values.
I think that's what the people are looking, asking.
Oh, and absolutely, absolutely.
And I don't know of any homes that have been sold recently in the Clay Pit Brook area.
Council Mercia? Do you have anything? Council Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at it from a comparable sales point of view, again, being in the banking industry, if you will, again, looking at these numbers, and I understand what the assessor is saying, that these sales took place in the fourth quarter of '07, so they're not going to be adjusted until, say, the first quarter of '08. But again, what about all of those properties in the neighborhood that can be looked at from a comparable value point of view, not a comparable sales point, a comparable value because of obviously what did take place with the flooding in that particular neighborhood? So again, I guess I would take exception to what the city manager said about not being able to look at it across the board. If in fact you have these drastic reductions, you've got 43%, 19.5%, 23%, 51%, why can't you then look at the neighborhood and say from a comparability standpoint, these other properties, even though the neighbors or the people still own those homes, they should be able to adjust those based upon these comparable sales? Again, that's just...
Mr. Manager?
If I could, Councilor, I think in these ones that you're giving of the 43%, 23%, 51%, those were all sales that took place in '07.
Correct.
And all of our data has to be as of December 31st, '06.
Okay.
So this
but
is all...
But come January, in the first quarter of '08...
That's when those tax bills...
Correct.
So the tax bills that go out on January of '08 reflect the values of December 31st, '06.
Okay.
So a year from now,
okay,
when we're looking at the properties that the values for the tax bills that will be going out in January '09, those will reflect these numbers.
And can these sales, and I'm sure subsequent sales or future sales, be used as comparable numbers so that people that live along New York, Casco, and other streets can have their assessments adjusted downward?
Absolutely, but it won't take place in this fiscal year. It'll take place in the next fiscal year.
Okay.
But absolutely, this is why you need this type of information.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Council Mercia?
Thank you. The way that I'm viewing what's going on here is that we're doing the best we can with the 15% lowered for land value. Some people might have fallen through the cracks and not have applied, and that could still take place. And I'm hearing that any action is governed by state law, and this is just local government. And I am a firm believer that things can be changed. If you can have laws that are state laws and we can indemnify people, then I don't know why we can't take this a bit higher and go to the Department of Revenue, and instead of meeting locally, we meet with them and get these people to meet with them, or you can do that yourself. But, you know, this is a catastrophic circumstance that happened in a neighborhood that these people are asking for relief, and on the local level, we're saying, but it's a state law. But you know what? It's a state law that we can all get together and go a little bit higher and take our case and make it personalized. You know what I'm saying? I know your hands are tied. I know that we're all here locally trying to do what we can and passing off the fact that, ooh, it's a state law. I don't know. Ooh, gee. Well, you know what? Maybe we can all gather on a bus and go down and set up an appointment with the DOR. They're just regular people that perhaps could have been people that were affected by something like this. So I'm thinking if we can't do anything here, then we're going to take our case a little bit higher, and maybe that's just where we should go. I don't know.
Can I say again?
Yes.
The values that were set for fiscal year '08, which are coming out shortly, are based on the sales of 2006 post-flood. And those values that I'm seeing based on the sales are not, they're not overassessed in any way. The sales are what's bringing these values in. So for past sales, I don't know what's happening down there this year. It's something that we're going to take a look at. But if the sales come in at $25,000, that's what those properties will be assessed for.
So in other words, we have to wait for years in order to get them some relief.
Not years.
No.
It's just, that's why I think it's an important change that's happened in a number of municipalities, and I'm pleased that we're doing it here in the city, it used to be that you'd wait 3 years. Now we do it every year. We update the values on a yearly basis so that we catch these market conditions as pretty much as they happen. You can't catch them, you can't change the value midway through for one neighborhood and not for another neighborhood. What's happened here, yes, it is a catastrophic situation, but land values and house values, property values have changed across the city over the last 6 months. That's why you have to have a snapshot in time that says this is the value at that particular point in time. And yes, these properties were affected by a flood in the prior year, so we're going to give them that 15% break. But they have been adjusted, but there has to be a point in time. You can't adjust as you go through. That's the reason why the rules are set up the way that they are, so that there is equity.
Okay.
You're seeing lower values. People are selling their homes at a reduced rate and taking a loss at the same time. I mean, your major investment is to sell your home.
I agree.
And they're not getting it, and
they
this
will,
isn't fair.
But they will pick it up in the following year. These values will be adjusted in the following year.
Okay, there's still a number of questions that don't relate to this particular issue from the PCC, so I think that we should just go ahead and schedule another meeting with a little additional time for next week. I don't know what members of the subcommittee, if they can make it here next week. Next Tuesday? Yeah. Next Tuesday, 5:30. What is, I know some folks have, I know one person works in Boston anyway, so what would be a good time? Is 5:30 better than 5 o'clock? 5:30 is better than 5 o'clock, and we touched on some of these issues. Perhaps we can get a little bit more clarification, Ms. LeMay, if you can look at the information that was submitted and get back to us on when this will be picked. I know you did say in '07, but maybe just a recap of what we discussed here. We can make it available for members of the subcommittee and the general public as well, and probably have a further discussion. We have a finance subcommittee and a bond authorization that is televised for tonight. So, Ms. Ignacio? Yeah.
I've been what I would like to see happen is that the homes that were underwater, we have to pay flood insurance, and we did get flooded twice. First one cost us average, from going around, $45,000 in damages for the first flood. The second flood, some people had more damages than others. You know, I was lucky the second time around. But my problem is, I don't think my land should be assessed the same as somebody that's high and dry. I mean, even though there's a 15% reduction, I think what I'm seeing now is we have properties on the market in our area, but they're not selling. The condos at Grandview, they're a little higher and drier than the homes or a two-family, and those comps aren't adequate, as far as I'm concerned. I would like to see, and even though you may not see, you should be able to identify all the properties that had damage through FEMA, you know, through the city. Everybody, Salvation Army has records of, you know, who collected donations. So those homes should just be tagged. That's the way I see it. And we're not going to have any comps for sales in our area. The houses are on the market, but they're not going to sell. And if somebody's going to have a chance to buy something out of the flood zone versus a flood zone, they're going to take something outside of it.
Okay. Well, I agree. And why don't we, if you could plan on being here next week with that information, I think that'll be helpful, because I mean, we want to help them. We want to stay in the law, and you know what, the law isn't working to people that are affected by this, and you know, maybe we do have to go and march down there. But if you can come back to the next meeting, I think that'd be helpful. So, anything else on this? Did you want to answer? Did you want to respond, Ms. LeMay?
I wanted to ease your mind that the Grandview condominiums were not used for single families or two families. Those are strictly condos. We don't use those to look at assessments for single families, but there have been some sales, and I'll be happy to show you what they were.
In Claypit area?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Counselor, I think certainly meeting next Tuesday to go over some of these items and some of the tax questions from a general standpoint may be useful, but I think what would be more useful for all of the affected individuals, very frankly, is to schedule some time with the assessor to go over their property and their issues, and then they can get some real one-on-one time with the assessors. I think that would be far more productive for them to get their answers.
Does that make sense, Linda and Dick? Do you have a list of folks that would be willing to do that?
But I know there's some couples out there, they're not making the meetings, and I certainly would like them represent. I'd like to be able to represent them in their interests.
Yeah, is that possible? That makes sense. There are some elderly folks that, you know, would need some
Absolutely.
assistance.
I have a list of all the properties that were affected that I know of, and went through, so I could certainly show you those, and you could tell me if there was anything other than what I have.
I think Deb.
Okay.
Fagioli.
I just wanted to make two comments. After the flood, I know you said you went through the neighborhood to put tags on the doors. Most of us weren't living there. And there was a certain amount of time that you could do it. And a lot of us didn't even go back home again. So even though you made the effort to do that, I'm really questioning how many people actually got those notices. And when we found out about it was when we were at the fundraiser. And most of the people at the table didn't even know about it. So that was the last year, and then we had the second flood. And when you said that there's sales in the neighborhood, not on my street.
I'm sorry, I don't know what street that
At
is.
Townsend. So anybody that was really underwater, there are no comps. Because first of all, you had to get your house back in order, so you couldn't sell it. It took a good year, and then we got hit with the second flood. So when you're saying that there are comps, if you were at the fundraiser, you would see how many people there were really affected, and when we were just getting back on our feet and nobody's really selling, so that the theory sounds good, but the actuality, when we're talking about the people that are here, well, we're all coming from work, and you're talking about meeting individually, 200 people meeting individually? I just think there should be more thought about organizing and organizing how will you approach us as a neighborhood. Individual, is 200 people to sit down with you? I don't think that that's possible. But that's it, thanks.
Well, Mr. Massey, real quick.
Everybody's talking about just had a question through you to the assessor. Are we comping our flood lots with other flood lot sales? I'd hate to be comped in a two-family that's in a flood zone to the two-family that I can see, but it's up the other end of Martin and in the high ground, because that's not gonna flood. So I'd like the comps to be in the floodplain zone, if
They
that's
are.
a possibility.
They were.
Okay. So why don't we resume this next? There's a lot of questions that are unanswered, that need to be answered. We did go over some of these, Mr. Carvel, earlier, but I think it's better rather than, try to squish it all into this meeting, that we plan on meeting next week for 5:30. There'll be no other meetings. After that, we'll have a better understanding as to the assessments and the comps, and we'll meet at that time. So 5:30 next Tuesday. I thank you for coming. I think there was some confusion again with the time. My apologies, but we do want to help you, and we are going to do everything that we can. You're welcome to stay. This will come up under subcommittee. You're welcome to stay and add any additional information that you would like, but if not, we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you. Motion to adjourn by Council Caulfield, second by Council Mercia. I think we'd like to go right into the Finance Subcommittee meeting. You on this one too?
Oh, yeah, let it go. All right. I'm going to scorch the earth later on.
Can the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Elliott. Counselor Caulfield. Counselor Mendonça.
Here.
Present.
This is a meeting that was called as a result of the bond authorization for improvements at the, excuse me,